For centuries, the name Robin Hood has stirred the imagination. Tales of the bold outlaw, clothed in Lincoln green, loosing arrows with uncanny precision, and stealing from the rich to give to the poor have echoed across medieval taverns, Elizabethan stages, and modern cinema screens. He is at once a rebel, a hero, a criminal, and a savior, a figure larger than life, embodying ideals of justice in an unjust world. But like all great legends, Robin Hood raises a haunting question. Was he ever real? This journey will peel back the layers of myth and history. We will travel into shadowy greenwood of medieval England, where ballads were sung by wandering minstrels, where kings waged wars abroad, while sheriffs ruled with iron hands at home, and where common folk longed for a hero to stand against oppression. In that fertile soil, the seed of Robin Hood took root. Before we can glimpse the man, or men, behind the legend, we must first understand the world that created him. The England that birthed Robin Hood's legend was not the fairy tale kingdom often painted in children's books. It was a land of deep inequality, brutal justice, and constant unrest. From the 12th to the 14th centuries, when the first Robin Hood stories surfaced, English society was rigidly hierarchical. At the top stood the king and his nobles, wealthy landowners who controlled vast estates. Below them, knights swore fealty, priests tended souls, and merchants prospered in towns. But the great majority were peasants and serfs, bound to the land, their lives measured by toil and taxation. The law was harsh and unforgiving. The forest, so central to Robin Hood myth, was not a playground of freedom but a royal preserve, where hunting deer or cutting wood without permission was a crime punishable by death. Sheriffs, such as the infamous Sheriff of Nottingham, were not bumbling villains but powerful officials, charged with enforcing royal law and collecting taxes. Against this backdrop of oppression, stories of resistance found eager ears. Ballads sung in smoky taverns or along dusty roads could speak of a bold outlaw who defied unjust sheriffs and championed the downtrodden. Such tales gave voice to frustrations that common people could not express openly. The earliest written references to Robin Hood date back to the 13th and 14th centuries, though oral traditions may be far older. In 1261, court records from Berkshire mention a fugitive named Robehod. Similar entries appear repeatedly in the following decades, suggesting that Robin Hood may have been a nickname applied to outlaws in general. These were turbulent times, marked by rebellions, civil wars, and shifting loyalties. Outlaws, sometimes former soldiers, sometimes dispossessed peasants, roamed the countryside in bands. The first literary appearance of Robin Hood comes in a 14th century poem by William Langland, Piers Plowman. The narrator admits, "I do not know my Paternoster perfectly as the priest sings it, but I know the rhymes of Robin Hood and Randolph, Earl of Chester." This passing line proves that by the late 1300s, Robin Hood ballads were already circulating widely, so widely that even an illiterate man might know them by heart. Soon after, more detailed ballads emerged, such as Robin Hood and the Monk around 1450, one of the oldest surviving manuscripts. In it, Robin is not the noble outlaw of later legend, but a brash and sometimes violent bandit, living outside the law yet commanding loyalty for his men. These early ballads reveal a darker Robin Hood, closer to a real medieval outlaw than the polished folk hero we know today. Central to the Robin Hood myth is the forest, particularly Sherwood Forest in Nottinghamshire. But why the forest? In medieval England, the forest was both feared and revered. Vast stretches of woodland were governed by forest law, separate from common law, under forest law. The king owned the animals and resources, and poaching was a serious offense. To peasants struggling to survive, these laws felt unjust. Why should the king alone feast on venison while the poor starved? Thus, the forest became a natural symbol of resistance. It was a refuge for outlaws, a place beyond the reach of ordinary authority, where one could live by one's own rules. In this sense, Robin Hood embodied the dream of freedom, a man who made the forest his home, outwitting sheriffs and nobles alike. Sherwood itself, stretching over 100,000 acres in its prime, was not the quaint woodland preserved today, but a sprawling wilderness. Within its tangled oaks and birches, bands of fugitives could easily vanish. Legends place Robin and his merry men here, feasting under the greenwood tree, a phrase that came to symbolize liberty itself. Was Robin Hood one man or many? Historians have searched for centuries, poring over dusty rolls and chronicles for a real figure behind the name. Several candidates emerge. Robert Hood of Wakefield. Early 14th century records mention a Robert Hood living in Yorkshire around 1316, married to a woman named Matilda, often called Maid Marian in later tales. Some argue he may have inspired the legend. Robin of Locksley. In Sheffield folklore, Robin is linked to the village of Locksley. This theory gained popularity in later centuries, though evidence is sparse. The outlaw archetype. Many suggest Robin Hood was not a single man, but a composite of numerous outlaws whose deeds merged in storytelling. The name itself may have become shorthand for any rebel. Despite these theories, no single historical Robin Hood can be confirmed. The truth may lie not in one man, but in the collective imagination of oppressed people yearning for justice. Every hero needs an enemy, and Robin Hood's greatest foe is the Sheriff of Nottingham. In reality, sheriffs were powerful royal officers, tasked with collecting taxes, enforcing law, and protecting the king's forests. They were deeply unpopular, seen as greedy and corrupt. To peasants, the sheriff symbolized tyranny, an enforcer of unjust laws that favored the rich. It is no wonder, then, that the sheriff became the perfect villain in outlaw ballads, whether he was a specific man or simply a stand-in for oppressive authority. The Sheriff of Nottingham gave Robin Hood a worthy adversary, embodying the eternal struggle between the powerless and the powerful. In the earliest stories, Robin often acts alone or with a small group, but by the 15th and 16th centuries, the merry men emerged. Little John, Will Scarlet, Much the Miller's Son, and eventually Friar Tuck. Each companion added new dimensions to the myth. Little John, towering yet loyal, reflects brotherhood and strength. Will Scarlet, often portrayed as fiery or dashing, symbolizes passion and rebellion. Friar Tuck, the jovial cleric, introduces humor and religious critique. Maid Marian, added later, brought romance and nobility to Robin's cause. Together, they form more than a band of thieves. They are a family, living by their own code under Greenwood. To medieval audiences, such camaraderie was deeply appealing. A vision of community outside the rigid feudal order. It is in later ballads and plays that Robin Hood truly transforms into the people's champion. By the 16th century, he was no longer a mere outlaw, but a noble thief who steals from the rich to give to the poor. This phrase, absent from the earliest texts, reflects shifting cultural needs. As inequality deepened, the idea of a hero who redistributes wealth resonated strongly. Robin thus became a figure of social justice. He embodied the hope that fairness could triumph over corruption, that even the lowliest peasant could strike back at oppressive lords. This evolution shows how legends adapt. Robin Hood was not frozen in time, but reshaped by each generation to reflect their struggles. The Robin Hood tales also carry subtle undertones of political rebellion. Some stories link him to the reigns of King Richard the Lionheart and his brother, King John. In these versions, Robin is loyal to Richard, resisting John's tyranny until the true king returns. While historians doubt these links were part of the earliest stories, they reveal how the legend was woven into broader national myths. Robin also clashes with corrupt clergy. In several ballads, he robs bishops and abbots, reflecting resentment toward a church seen as wealthy and exploitative. To ordinary people, Robin was not attacking faith itself, but the hypocrisy of religious leaders who hoarded wealth while preaching charity. Thus, Robin Hood became a symbol of resistance, not just against local sheriffs, but against unjust rulers and corrupt institutions at large. By the late Middle Ages, Robin Hood was a folk hero celebrated at festivals. May Day celebrations often featured Robin Hood plays, with villagers dressing as Robin, Marian, and the Merry Men. These performances blurred the line between entertainment and ritual, reinforcing Robin's place in communal life. The printing press ensured Robin Hood's survival. In the 16th century, collections of ballads were printed, spreading his fame across England. Now, he was not just a local outlaw, but a national icon. Through oral tradition, song, and print, Robin Hood became firmly entrenched in English culture, impossible to erase. So, who was Robin Hood in truth? The evidence suggests he was not one man, but a fusion of history, folklore, and imagination. He may have been inspired by real outlaws, but his legend grew because it answered a universal need: the desire for justice in an unjust world. Robin Hood represents more than an individual. He is the eternal outlaw, the champion of the oppressed, the rebel who dares to defy corrupt power. And that is why, centuries later, his name still endures. By the close of the Middle Ages, Robin Hood was no longer confined to whispered tales in taverns or rustic songs around village fires. He had taken root in England's cultural imagination, no longer just an outlaw with a bow. He had become a symbol, a canvas onto which each age painted its struggles, hopes, and dreams. As England transformed, from feudal kingdom to Renaissance power, from industrial empire to modern democracy, Robin Hood transformed with it. He was not a fixed character of history, but a living myth, reborn in every generation. This part of our journey follows the outlaw from the 15th century onward, from festival stages to the printed page, from Victorian morality to Hollywood glamour. Along the way, we will see why his story continues to matter in a world far removed from Sherwood's oaks. By the 15th and 16th centuries, Robin Hood had leapt from oral ballads into popular performance. May Day celebrations, with their revelry and symbolic defiance of authority, often included Robin Hood plays. Villagers dressed as Robin, Marian, Friar Tuck, and the Merry Men, performing comic skits that blended outlaw adventures with seasonal festivity. Robin was often cast as a lord of misrule, presiding over a world turned upside down, peasants mocking nobles, servants outwitting masters. The plays were not serious dramas, but carnivalesque, filled with slapstick, music, and satire, yet they reinforced Robin's role as a figure of rebellion and community. By the Elizabethan era, professional playwrights also embraced Robin Hood. Anthony Mundays plays the downfall of Robert, Earl of Huntingdon, 1598, and the death of Robert, Earl of Huntingdon, 1601. Reimagined Robin as a nobleman wronged by corrupt lords, forced into outlawry. This was a major shift. Robin was no longer a rustic yeoman, but an aristocrat, a reflection of Elizabethan tastes, which favored noble heroes over commoners. Through theater, Robin Hood began his evolution into the romantic outlaw, noble in spirit as well as deed. With the rise of the printing press, Robin Hood's fame spread far beyond festivals. Ballad collections circulated across England in cheap, mass-produced pamphlets. Titles like A Lytell Jest of Robin Hood, early 16th century, became wildly popular, fixing many of the outlaw's traits for centuries to come. These printed stories emphasized Robin's code of justice. He spared poor travelers, punished corrupt officials, and remained loyal to King Richard. They cemented the image of Robin as a righteous thief, distinguishing him from mere criminals. In the 17th and 18th centuries, garlands, small chapbooks of popular ballads, kept Robin's adventures alive. He was a household name, part of England's shared folklore, recited by children and elders alike. The printing press thus preserved Robin Hood not as a fleeting rumor history, but as a literary legend, ensuring that even as society changed, his bowstring would never fall silent. The 19th century brought Robin Hood a dramatic rebirth. This was the age of Romanticism, when poets, novelists, and historians glorified the medieval past as a time of chivalry and adventure. Sir Walter Scott's 1819 novel Ivanhoe was a turning point. Set in 12th century England, it wove Robin Hood, renamed Locksley, into the struggle between Saxons and Normans. Scott portrayed him as a skilled archer, loyal to King Richard, and a patriotic defender of English liberty. This portrayal had lasting impact. From then on, Robin was firmly linked to the reign of Richard the Lionheart and the villainy of King John, even though these connections were absent in earlier ballads. Scott's Ivanhoe essentially reset the legend for the modern era, blending history, romance, and nationalism. Victorian writers expanded on this vision. Children's editions presented Robin Hood as a moral hero, teaching virtues of bravery, loyalty, and generosity. The dark, violent edges of medieval outlaw were smoothed away, leaving a model gentleman bandit. By the 19th century, Robin Hood was no longer just a rebel. He was an idealized hero, embodying English values of fairness, courage, and resistance to tyranny. Why did Robin Hood resonate so strongly in Victorian times? The answer lies in the social upheaval of the Industrial Revolution. As factories rose and cities swelled, inequality deepened. The working poor lived in squalor, while industrialists amassed fortunes. Against this backdrop, the idea of a hero who took from the rich to aid the poor found renewed power. Robin Hood became a folk socialist of sorts, a symbol of fairness in an unfair system. Writers and reformers invoked his name when discussing wealth distribution and social justice. Even radical political groups used Robin Hood imagery to demand reforms. Thus, the outlaw of Sherwood was reinvented for a new age of class struggle. The 20th century catapulted Robin Hood onto the world stage through film and television. Each adaptation reflected its own era's values. Douglas Fairbanks' 1922 silent film presented Robin as a swashbuckling daredevil, reflecting the exuberance of the Jazz Age. Errol Flynn's 1938 classic, The Adventures of Robin Hood, dressed the outlaw in dazzling technicolor. Flynn's Robin was dashing, witty, and romantic, an escapist hero for audiences during the Great Depression. Disney's 1973 animated film, casting Robin as a fox, introduced a legend to children worldwide, blending humor with moral clarity. Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, 1991, reimagined him as a rugged action hero, while Robin Hood, Men in Tights, 1993, turned the legend into parody. Russell Crowe's 2010 film attempted a grittier, more historical take, linking Robin to political rebellion. Each version reveals more about the era that produced it than about medieval England. Robin Hood's adaptability is his greatest strength. Whether charming rogue, noble knight, or revolutionary, he remains relevant. Robin Hood is no longer just England's outlaw. He is a global figure. His story resonates wherever people feel oppressed by wealth or power. In Latin America, bandits like Pancho Villa have been compared to Robin Hood. In South Asia, folk heroes such as Fulin Devi, the Bandit Queen, have been cast in a similar mold. Across cultures, the archetype of the outlaw who defends the poor against the powerful finds echoes. Robin Hood is not simply English folklore. He is part of a universal tradition of resistance. By now, historians largely agree that there was no single historical Robin Hood. Instead, he is a mythic composite, shaped by centuries of storytelling. But does that diminish his importance? Far from it. Legends endure not because they are factually true, but because they express emotional truths. Robin Hood embodies timeless questions. What is justice? When is it right to break the law? Can one person stand against corruption? These questions mattered in medieval England, in industrial Britain, and they matter still today. Robin Hood's survival for over 700 years can be explained by three enduring qualities. Adaptability. From outlaw ballads to Disney cartoons, he changes with the times. Moral clarity. Even when violent, his cause is always just, making him a reassuring symbol of fairness. Rebellion with hope. Unlike tragic rebels, Robin wins. He outsmarts authority, offering not despair but inspiration. In a world where inequality persists, Robin Hood remains eternally relevant. He is the dream that tyranny can be defied, that the powerless can prevail, that justice can triumph. From medieval taverns to Hollywood screens, from village festivals to global politics, Robin Hood's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. He has been a yeoman outlaw, a noble earl, a socialist champion, a swashbuckling adventurer, and even an animated fox. Yet through all these transformations, one truth remains. Robin Hood is a hero people create when they need hope. Whether or not he ever lived is almost beside the point. What matters is that for over 7 centuries, he has lived in imagination, inspiring rebellion, justice, and courage. So, as we close this exploration, picture once more the outlaw in green beneath Sherwood's oaks, drawing back his bow. He is eternal, not because history proves him real, but because humanity will always need him. Backhand index pointing right, if you found this journey fascinating. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with others who love history and legend. More epic explorations await. Don't miss them.